Now, one of the most fascinating things you talk about is the interconnectedness, unintentional interconnectedness of the Gospels. Explain how that works. This is really interesting.
Yeah, let me just toss this out to you guys. Have you guys noticed how your Gospels don't match? They're not precise. Give you an example. How many women run to the tomb of Jesus on the first Sunday? How many women? Yell it out. 2? 3? Depends on the gospel. Really? How many angels are waiting for the women when they get there? Come on. 2? 1? It depends on the gospel.
Where there's 2, there's always 1.
That's true. How about this? How about this, though? Okay, smarty pants. You know, next week he's going to have you'll see a dialogue with Mark Middleburg on the stage, right? He's going to be doing the same thing to Mark he's doing to me now. Anyway, but think about, how about this, though? There's a sign over the cross of Jesus. I think it has 6 words, 5, 6 words. 4 Gospels record that sign. Do any of those Gospels agree with each other about what the sign says? No. And you trust those Gospels. You trust them as reliable eyewitness accounts when they have so many variants and disagreements between the Gospels. I've had professors challenge their students in college. And by the way, if you are in the age of 15 to 30, the culture sees you as low-hanging fruit. They really do, because they know in that age group, about 60 to 70% of you will walk away from the church in those years. Only a third will ever return. We are shrinking as a group, and it's happening in that demographic. And I remember one guy said, I left because my professor simply challenged me to read the resurrection story, the nativity, the Passion Week, in all 4 Gospels and just compare them to one another. And when I did that, I realized they are very different. And he walked away. Well, I'm here to tell you something, okay? When I read that for the first time as a skeptic, I was like, wow, I'm starting to think this is actually true information. Because if you've ever worked with witnesses, you know one rule of witnesses. They never, ever agree. Ever. It could happen 5 minutes ago. Someone could come up here, and I used to run an experiment in front of my youth group. Someone would run up, slap me on the side of the head, and run off the stage. And I would ask everyone on a card, don't talk to each other, just tell me, what did you just see? You wouldn't believe the variation between the accounts. They just saw it together. We were all together. They couldn't even agree on the sex of the perpetrator. Think about that. But did the event really happen? Of course. What is my job as a detective is to figure out why you say it one way and he says it another way. So I always say this, if there was a robbery in this room and I wanted to know what was the guy wearing, you think I'm going to ask him? No way. I'm going to ask her. Because he's going to say, I don't know, like a t-shirt maybe? Dark t-shirt? She's going to say, oh, no. It's like an Izod t-shirt. You know the one that has the band that's tight right about halfway here? And the limp collar shirt, not the straight collar shirt, 3 buttons stopped right around here. What is that about? Well, she just bought 3 of those for him last week for some, and so she actually gets it. That's why you ask her that question, right? And if they disagree on the description of the shirt, it doesn't mean that there was no shirt or no suspect. It just means that they're coming at it from different perspectives. My job is to figure out what the perspectives are. So when I read the Gospels and I saw that these things would sometimes leave out details, like Luke will say, Jesus is in front of Caiaphas at a trial, and they're testing Jesus, so they think, you think you're divine, you think you're God. How about this? So, someone slaps him and says, tell us, Jesus, who prophesied? Who slapped you? And I'm thinking, how hard is that? I would just look at the guy and say, you did, you moron, right? I mean, how hard is it to tell you who slapped me? Because Luke doesn't describe the fact that Matthew describes that before this whole thing started, they put a blindfold on Jesus. Luke never mentions it. So his statement's actually kind of confusing until you get the other eyewitness account. And that's what it is in our cases all the time. I see this in my professional work constantly. One confusing statement clarified by another witness. And you see this all the time.
And that's a form of corroboration, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's just the nature. So what bothered me was I was not a believer, but I was reading the Gospels. And when I saw that kind of thing in the Gospels, I was like, this looks suspiciously like real eyewitness accounts. Because look, if I'm trying to create this fiction, I'm going to work that stuff out.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to work that stuff out so there's no question about it. But if you work real cases, you see that those little, warts and pimples on the account are still there. And that's what I was seeing in the eyewitness accounts. And it just struck me as I should probably go a little further with this.
And the fact that these were unplanned, apparently. I mean, they fit together
Yes.
In an unintentional
They're unintentional way. So, for example, why is it at the feeding of 5,000, I think Jesus asks Philip, where can we go to feed these people? Philip is a minor character in the Gospels. Jesus never asks Philip for anything. He's going to ask Simon, right? He's going to ask somebody. He's not going to, his top three, he's not going to ask Philip. Who the heck is Philip? You never get from that account why it is he would ask Philip until you read the other accounts and realize they're in Bithynia, where Philip was raised. The one person who could actually answer that question would be Philip. But you'd never know from that first account. You had to kind of do your homework, right? And see, why do these eyewitnesses say certain things? And when I started to do that, I was like, wow, this stuff is bugging me.